This is the Bottom Shot Podcast.
Pulvereri is up high. They come out of turn number 4. Stutter between the turns. The fans come to their feet.
It is Ted Christopher still in command. Keith Rocco right there on his back bumper.
Bringing Stafford Motor Speedway's past and present together.
They are side by side running for the finish line. It's a photo finish.
Deep into turn number 3. He goes in deeper than most. Christopher is in trouble. It is Keith Rocco to slingshot to the bottom, and he'll take down the win.
A Stafford Motor Speedway production where we will hear from the personalities from the past and present that found success on the legendary half-mile oval.
The scoreboard shows goose eggs as they wait. It's Pulvereri. He wins it by inches over Richie Evans in the Spring Sizzler.
Unbelievable chain of events.
Now, here are your hosts, Paula Root and Kyle Rickey. We are chipping away at the winter months here at the Stafford Motor Speedway. Kyle Rickey and Paula Root back with you here on the Bottom Shot Podcast here from Stafford. One snow day at a time, but we are finally, Paul, within 100 days of the NAPA Auto Parts Spring Sizzler here at the Stafford Motor Speedway.
It's coming quick. It's the 49th annual Spring Sizzler. Doug Akobe's going for a 5, which is unbelievable. If he has a ride, of course, I imagine he'll find the ride. I would think it's Doug. He's going for his 5th Sizzler victory, which would be second all-time behind Ted Christopher with 6. Unbelievable. It's a guy who got his start at Stafford in a late model.
Absolutely. A late model champion, a pro stock champion. Almost didn't even make the move to the modifieds, and what a career he has had because of that move in the early 2000s.
Hopefully he's got a ride, but if not, I know Craig Lutz is after that the victory at the fall final. He's going to be chomping at the bit for a Sizzler. I think he's on 9 consecutive top 10s at Stafford. That's pretty unbelievable.
Kind of made his mark, I guess now 2 years ago in 2018 for the first time, making the podium here at the Stafford Motor Speedway.
Sat on the pole as well.
Sat on the pole and then finally got that win. So it was only a matter of time.
It's a tough event, and I think he's got 2 back-to-back podiums in the Sizzler, and now he has a win, and he's just also announced he's going to compete in all 4 of our open mod events this summer, kicking off with our May event, and then going in every event. There's an event in May, event in June, July, and August. So he'll be here a total of 7 times in 2020.
Yeah, between the NASCAR Wheel and Modify Tour races and the open shows. That is part of the news this week. There's been a lot going on here at the Stafford Motor Speedway since we were last with you a couple of weeks ago. You mentioned Craig Lutz, but some other news in the modified world. Some more of those SK Elite drivers making the move up to the SK Modifieds.
Another graduate from the Wild Thing Cards to the SK Lights into the SK Modifieds. Our 2019 SK Light champion, Teddy Hodgson, is going to make the jump to the SKs. And he's a driver that is very smooth, takes care of his equipment. He reminds me of a driver that has gone pretty far along the way. I'd say he reminds me of a Ryan Preece. He really does. He likes the top side. He's smooth, he's consistent, takes care of his car. I think he's a force.
And that's why he's a 2019 champion, quiet, and one of the nicest kids you'll meet in the pit area.
And he's got a pretty good crew chief that's going to be setting that car up, going to be out of the Keith Rocco team there, and he's going to be a brand new Troyer, and they're going to be fast. I think he's going to surprise a lot of fans, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in victory lane.
Absolutely not. And what is turning out to be a pretty cool rookie class in the SK Modifieds.
It's Brian, Teddy.
And right there,
Mike
that's
Flynn,
all you really need. But then
all
you have Mike
3
Flynn.
are also Wild Thing Car graduates. And I think that is the coolest thing. I used to compete in the karts. All 3 of those kids began their career on the small track when they were 10 years old. And are now SK modified. It's so cool.
And for those that don't know, that are tuning in maybe for the first time, Wild Thing Karts, Monday nights here at Stafford Motor Speedway throughout the summer months on what is referred to as the mini mile.
Yeah, I think it's probably a 5th. It's the track size kind of changes in our minds every night. It's about a 1/5 of a mile. Some have said a quarter, but it's definitely not a quarter. Tight corners, long straightaways, and kids as young as the age of 4 are out there. In the Cubs. And there's so many graduates that have gone on to SK Racing, SK Lights. Our SK champion this season is also a CART graduate. It's a great program.
Going to be a great summer, great program from Monday nights to Friday nights. So another one of those graduates, George Bissett Jr. He's moving up into the SK Lights, I think full-time.
He's full-time
for
Stafford,
this year,
yep.
Going from the street stocks.
And I think he's also going to be a driver. I know there's been a trend in the SK Lights is where a rookie has a shot at the title.
Yep.
With going back to Corey DiMatteo, he was a rookie. He was also the champion. Jervis, Galco, all their first season were competitive, getting victories, and at the end of the year, they ended up the champion. So I wouldn't be too surprised if the Mad Pup ends up the champion.
And he may not be the only street stock driver from 2018 moving into the SK Lights for 2019. So going to be fun. Keep an eye out on the Stafford Speedway website. We're going to talk more about that website later in the show. But other news, speaking of street stocks, a new sponsor for the big Firecracker show and their special event for this summer.
Yeah, we have a great sponsor that signed on, a Mid-State Site Development in the corners. Signed on to do a $5,000 purse for the street stocks.
That's huge.
$750 to win. It's going to be a 30-lap event on July 3rd, and we're going to cap off the night with fireworks.
Can't wait. Fireworks, street stocks, plus all the other divisions here this summer.
It's going to be a great night. It's going to be one of those classic summer nights.
And new companies coming into the Stafford Motor Speedway and supporting the local divisions. Can't ask for much more than that.
That's great.
And also some big news. Not to be released here, but coming up soon here for drivers this summer.
This is going to be a cool one for all our any team that has put in a number for 2020 is going to get a great treat. It's going to be announced probably Tuesday of this coming this week, and it's really cool. It's a great tribute, and I'm excited about it, and so is everyone else in the office. So stay tuned. It's going to be cool.
Can't wait. Going to be a big announcement this week. And the drivers are going to be much appreciative of this announcement, and the race teams, no doubt. Let's talk about the guest today, longtime driver and current father of a driver here at the Stafford Motor Speedway. Been competing here, or did compete here for decades, and Rick Fuller.
Rick Fuller, yeah. So when I think of a Rick, I kind of grew up in the 90s at the track, and when I think of modifieds, I think of the Polar car. Right,
yep, absolutely.
That is the first thing that comes to mind, and that was his car for many of seasons. And 3-time Sizzler champion, which very few people even get the chance to win the Sizzler. Forget 3 times, but he joins a list with Richie Evans, Maynard Troyer, Doug Coby, Ted Christopher, Jeff Bodine, of drivers who have not only won one Sizzler, but a multiple.
Best of the best on that list right there, and Rick will join us here in a couple of moments. The 1993 NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour champion, a street stock winner here, and pretty cool that 30 years later almost, his daughter running and winning in the street stocks.
Yeah. No, it's just a classic Stafford Speedway tradition where, the father or the parents are involved and the kids get involved, and Meg is a good shoe.
Absolutely. And we're seeing that with so many drivers in the pit area. Megan contending for the championship last year, and no doubt will be contending for the championship this year after having, I believe, a 3-win season, 4-win season in 20.
Definitely. I'd say probably the favorite in 2020.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
She has a lot of experience, and look for her to contend for this year's championship. Rick Fuller will join us here on the Bottom Shop Podcast coming up here from the Stafford Speedway. Bottom Shop Podcast rolls on here at the Stafford Motor Speedway, and joined by 1993 NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour champion, multiple-time Stafford Motor Speedway winner, including 3 in the Spring Sizzler, a street stock winner here, Rick Fuller. Rick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And welcome back to the clubhouse. I understand there's quite a few memories in this building for you.
It's fun. It took me 10 minutes to get over to this chair because I kept trying. I'm remembering everything way back in the day, way back.
His first question was, I think the bar was over there.
Yeah, the bar was definitely over there. I remember it.
2 most important things, the payout window and the bar, right?
Absolutely. The racing came third, fourth.
There you go.
So, yeah, we're glad to have you on the podcast. Kind of the goal of the podcast is just to tell some stories and kind of just tell us how you got started in racing. Like as a kid, what was your first time at a racetrack? Your first time around the cars?
It's actually, some people have already heard it, but it's interesting because my brother Jeff bought a race car when he was 15, and he brought it to Westboro Speedway, and he was driving it, and they found out he didn't have a license, and so they threw him out. So the next week he went back with my brother Bobby to drive it.
He was older, right?
And Bobby was 2 years older, so then Bobby started driving it, and I used to help on that car. There's about a 5-year difference between us, and so I helped Bobby for a while. I helped Jeff for a while, and then thought to myself, how hard could this really be? Yeah, what a mistake that was.
So what's that first race like? You decide you want to be a race car driver. Where was it, and how'd you do?
It's funny. I'm not positive how I did my first actual race, but back then, and again, this is not quite back to the Ben-Hur days, but, back then they used to do the spectator races. Uh-huh. And for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's all the drunk morons coming out of the stands, getting in their car or their parents' car and racing at the end of the night. And I used to race spectator races at Westboro, Hudson, Star, Monadnock.
In your own car or in your father's car?
And my father would never let me drive his car. He's seen me drive. No, I had a Dodge Dart Swinger and won every one of them. It was kind of cool.
Undefeated?
Undefeated.
Undefeated in the spectator drag. So if we ever bring back the spectator drags, we got to test that record.
Yeah, we do. We have to do that. And then 1979, I bought a six-cylinder Camaro that I started racing at Westboro Speedway.
So you began your non-spectator drag career at
Westboro.
Westboro?
In 1979.
1979. And who were the other drivers that were around in that era, in that class?
That you would know? Boy. I mean, my competition were people like Kevin Bowman and, people that you wouldn't even know. Actually, Ricky Summers was starting to run around that time too. Joey LeMay, I only ran in '79. I only ran a handful of races. 1980 was my first full year.
At the same track in the same division.
At the same track. Actually, I won the championship in '80. And
immediate success. This is the Rick Fuller way.
My brothers had been racing so long, I just knew all the right people. My car was probably a little more superior than some. So
what were the cars like then? So it's a Camaro.
Well, when I first put it on the racetrack, people asked me all the time, because I drove with one hand. And when I first put it on the racetrack, my first 4 events, I went down into the corner and fell out of the seat because I was using a Mustang bucket seat. Fell right out. And I thought to myself, well, this can't be good. I mean, this can't be how everyone does this. So I started holding on to the drive shaft tunnel, and I raced with one hand.
So that's how you began to race with one hand. And
it wasn't until the next year that I bought some of those famous fiberglass wraparound seats. And no padding, no anything.
So when you say you fell out of the seat, your butt's on the floor?
My butt slid right out of the seat onto the drive shaft tube. So managed not to hit the wall. I don't know how. I just.
That was a pretty tight track. So there's a lot of turns there, right?
Oh yeah.
So falling out of the seat, you put up your arm. And the rest is history.
Oh yeah, and I finished the race too. I mean, like I said, the first few races, it was just we just finished the car. It was getting near the end of the season, and it wasn't. The car was okay. Over the winter, we made it good.
It's at Westboro. Let's talk about when do you discover Stafford Motor Speedway? Because you were here, I believe, not too much longer after that, in 1982, in Victory Lane here in the street stock.
Yeah, I got together with my cousin who owns Fuller Automotive. He had been sponsoring my brother Bobby. And put together a street stock for me. We call it the big track car because we went all the way from Westboro Speedway to Thompson Speedway. So
in Westboro was what
a quarter mile.
A quarter. So you went from a quarter mile to a 5/8 to high bank, very fast.
Oh yeah, and that car, remarkably worked very well here and Waterford. I don't know. We changed nothing, and we ran well at all the tracks with it.
And so you come to Stafford. It's a little bit of a challenging track. The corners are different. It's pretty flat. How did you take to the track and the division? It was also a very competitive class back in the day.
I want to think I know everything. I just, you just ask me, I'll tell you the answer. But the truth, I used to get to the racetrack as early as I could. And if I wasn't working on the car, I was in the grandstands, up at top, watching every car, every division, every class, everything going on, how to handle the racetrack. And you'd be surprised how much you can learn just by watching.
And I still feel like all these years later, you're one of the first here every Friday night with Meg.
Well, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to, to have an edge.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you continue in the full body cars for a couple seasons, and then eventually make that big jump into a modified. What inspired that transition? You went from a Camaro type car, stock type car, to the wild and crazy modifieds, which we all love.
Well, again, I'm going to blame my cousin. By the way, his name is Dick Fuller. I always say appropriately named at birth, but let's just leave it alone. In 1982, I made a decision that I had wasted enough of my money on race cars, and I sold everything. And I was working for him in the car wash, and right around mid-season in '83, he and his partner called me into the office and said, "Sit down." And I said, "What are you talking? I'm really busy here. I got stuff to do." "Nope, just sit down." And they started showing me pictures of an enclosed hauler, of a SK modified. Actually, at the time, it was a modified that we were going to make into an SK, and a bunch of other things. And I said, "What's this?" He said, "Well, we've come to the realization that you're a jerk if you're not racing." They didn't use those words, but just for the sake of the podcast, I'm a jerk. And so this is what you're going to do. And from there, we kept going and going and going until he built a tour car.
That's awesome. So they got you a car just so you weren't a pain in the ass.
Well,
I'll say it.
I'm going to say at the time the car wash was making enough money so that he could justify keeping me happy.
And so, do you come right to Stafford with that car? You go to Thompson?
No, we went to again. Didn't finish it until a quarter of the way into the season or so. Went down and raced SNRA, the Southern New York Racing Association at Thompson.
Okay.
It had a couple of halfway decent finishes with it, but again, I'm driving a show car, made into a race car, and won Rookie of the Year at the end of '83. Went back in 1984 with a brand new chassis dynamics car, and won the championship.
And so that's the modifieds, not the SK.
No, those are
SKs.
There was Southern New York Racing Association.
So those like the sportsman style?
But they were really SKs.
Okay.
They weren't a full-blown modified.
So I don't really have a lot of knowledge on that division.
And that's what I wanted to ask. I'll go into a little more detail. Who were some of the stars of the day in SNRA, a division that we've heard a little bit about, especially at Thompson. They ran them fairly regularly there. But, that's 30 years ago before records were really kept all that well.
40 years ago.
40 years.
I can tell you this much. When you guys think you have a good car count, you ain't even close.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I mean, and they started everyone. I started in some races with 50 cars. I mean, it's insane the amount of cars that they would run. But some of the stars, Lou Funk, he dominated the division. I called him Funky Lou. Wayne Dion was real good in it. I believe Pearl ran in it. A bunch of these guys I think Bob Potter, I think, ran in it too. Kerry Malone.
Wow.
All the names that end up in the SK ranks.
Yep.
So
Right.
was that division just like a sportsman's type modified that was on a tour?
No, it was like a SK type motor
Okay.
in a modified, but we ran real race tires. That was the big difference.
Okay.
And back in the day, that's when I met Marvin M&H. He was the mad scientist. I got to tell you, he'd bring stuff. He'd go, "Here, try these," and you bolt them on the car, and you're like, "Wow, I'm Superman!" And into the next corner, you go, "What happened?"
So that's what, 84-ish?
That's 84-ish.
85, NASCAR decides to start a tour versus the what was like almost like a national tour, and kind of go and get points wherever you can, kind of control it a little more with the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour, what was the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour, open at Thompson. You were in that very first race. What was that transition, I guess, like from 84 to a tour type format and still a relatively new driver?
It was interesting at the very least. And again, my cousin decided that we were going to race both the tour car and the SK, teamed up with Teddy Marsh. Teddy Marsh maintained both cars, and we ran full-time at Waterford Speed Bowl and actually won the championship there and ran on the tour. And, you're right. There was a lot more structure. There was a lot more you can do this, you can't do that. Never been much of a rules guy, but what are you going to do? It's what I wanted to do. And, the first year, it had its bumps for sure.
What kind of bumps?
That's the follow-up question. Obviously, we hear a NASCAR and the word bumps. We're going to ask what?
It just, the transition, like you said, it took a little while to get the feel for it, the cars were different. There were a lot more power, a lot more, the tire fall off. These tires wear, and you'd slow down, 2 and 3 seconds sometimes because the tires wore out so quick. And it took, you drove those cars. Nowadays, like with these, even with them when we were running the McCreary's on the SK, we were faster than the modifieds with an SK.
Less fall off.
Yeah, the tire just did the same thing every lap and didn't fall off at all. But that was the big thing was learning how to drive a complete piece of crap after about 15 laps until you pitted.
Right.
Surviving.
Yeah.
Yep. So I would love to to get the kind of understand the vibe in the paddock at that time, right? Stafford just dropped the modifieds. I hear stories all the time about how there was a boycott of Stafford. Everyone was mad at Stafford bringing the SKs in. As a driver and a person who actually competed on the tour in '85, what was kind of the mentality? What was the direction that people I'm on the tour now. I guess at that time, it's not even the tour yet, just the modifieds, right? So kind of what's the vibe in the paddock then?
I've always tried not to get involved in the politics of it.
It's fair.
I've been around enough businesses. I worked at my dad's business, since I could walk. And I understand that people have to make money in order to keep doors open. So, I understood that there was a lot more to it than you do or you don't want to race there.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to race. We keep saying back then, but people don't get it. If you weren't racing at least 4 nights a week, you weren't racing.
Yeah.
I'd run out of work. I'd jump in the van, because at the time it was just a van, and I was always going somewhere. I raced Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Back in the street stock days, and I was racing at least 2 and 3 nights a week because I got tied up with people like Mario. You know what I mean? If that guy wasn't racing, yeah, really.
You mentioned the 85 championship a bit ago, the same year the tour was formed. Talk us through that championship run, especially that final night running at the Bowl.
We actually, Waterford is its own unique atmosphere. We're going to call that.
That's
There's the political correctness. He nails it again.
It's funny because the first night we won, which was very early in the season, we out on the front stretch and we're standing there for the photos and everything, and the people are throwing beer at us from the stands. It's funny if it's not bottles, though, because those hurt, they don't feel good. And Teddy Marsh wouldn't come back to Victory Lane after that. I don't know if he didn't think he could catch. Or I don't know. But it was a tough crowd. Mm-hmm. It was a real tough crowd. But, if they like you, maybe you're not doing it right. So, it was very competitive all year. Really, Jerry Pearl and I had a heck of a competition back and forth. And on the last night, all I had to do was finish the race. It seems easy, right? Just finish the race, and I'm going to win the championship. And I forget if it was lap 2 or lap 7, but it wasn't long into it. I was straight into the turn 3 wall. It took them 20 minutes to get the car out of the wall.
Wow.
As you know, that racetrack will eat up a car.
Yeah.
And I got to stand there for the entire remainder of the race on the fence watching the championship slip away. And we ended up tied. But I didn't know anything about NASCAR never having a tie. They don't do ties. And of course, they made me wait until Tuesday before they called to tell me, laughingly.
So you're sweating it out.
Yeah, right. That, by the way, you didn't tie, you won. So, it was memorable for sure.
And that's your first modified championship.
That's my first SK championship. Yep, was in 85. No, my first one was 84 at Thompson.
At Thompson.
So I won the SK at Thompson, which, like you said, was it really an SK or a modified? And then 85 at Waterford.
Wow. And so you end up, you're on the tour. You end up coming to Stafford. You find all this great success. You win the Sizzler. Talk to me about that. That's one of the all-time biggest events in the modified community, and you're standing on the podium next to some of the greatest modified drivers of all time.
I've always been fortunate to be with the right people, to be around a lot of the right people, and some of these guys, the greatest of all time in the modifieds, they were just people.
Mm-hmm.
They put their pants on the same way. You hear the stories. Yeah, we all drank beer after.
Yeah.
We all, if you treat the way you want to be treated, and they were all fun to race with. So,
Sizzler, a big event now. Was it just as big back in the day?
Always the Sizzler and the fall final.
Yep.
They're right in the same category as the Thompson 300 that doesn't exist anymore. There was always a check mark that you put next to some of the races, and those would have been some of the really big ones.
Yeah, I think just the fact that you have 3 of them, and you're on, you're in the Stafford history books next to Teddy, next to Maynard Troyer, next to Richie Evans, next to the Bodine. It's just, what is that? I know you kind of said they put their pants on the same way, but that has to have some pride there.
I've never seen this book that you speak of.
The history book. You got 3 Sizzler wins. You're up there all time.
Well, no, I've never read the book, so I've always loved this track, so it's really cool that I believe I've won in every division that I've raced there. The
Street stocks,
SKs. Busch North,
Pro stock.
Pro Stock, which was a one-off comeback for the Pro Stocks. It was a division that you guys created, I think, right?
94.
Yep. And so, it's just I took a liking to the place. So to stand in Victory Lane, really, really special.
It's awesome.
Did you ever, and I guess, we're going to talk about some of your starts in NASCAR's National Series, but did you ever have that aspiration to be a full-time NASCAR Cup Series driver at the time or Grand National driver?
Oh, it was always the plan.
Yep.
I mean, you're kidding yourself if it's not what you're doing, unless, of course, there's something with such strong ties keeping you. But, that is what I wanted to do. And I actually, because I owned a business and I had other things going on, I went and got my pilot's license so that I'd be able to get back and forth to the tracks easier. And it just, the right thing never materialized.
Mm-hmm.
You hear it all the time, these people going down and, losing their shirts or, just getting kicked to the curb. And I was always careful just not to jump on anything. So it never happened.
Yeah, and so you made 4 starts in the Busch, now Xfinity Series for Doug Taylor. Kind of talk to us about what the environment in NASCAR was then. It's a different era that a lot of us don't really understand, and how you can just go find a ride in a top series and go race.
Yeah, I'm not sure how these guys do it now. There's people that play video games, I guess, that get rides now. Someone was telling me that
tough topic.
that Doug Colby was on a rant about that just not long ago.
Yeah.
Sorry, Doug.
Yeah, really. I gave up everything to go try it. I got put together with Doug Taylor through a couple of mutual friends. He had Patty Moise driving for him. He had a couple other people, Kevin LePage earlier on. And he asked me, hey, would you be able to? So I went and ran a couple of races for him. We were at IRP, which is now Lucas Oil.
It'll always be IRP.
Yes, it will. I'm sorry.
Which is a track that's kind of similar to Stafford in a way. It's a half mile flat.
Oh, it's awesome. I got to tell you, I took right to it. We were at IRP in '97, and that's back again when you had to be a race car driver. You had to have good people around you because there was 60 teams there. And I qualified on day 1. There was 2 days of qualifying.
Wow.
Yep. And I made the show on day 1. And Kentucky Fried Chicken was just starting to make a splash in the series. I'm trying to remember who they were sponsoring a Busch car, and he didn't make the show. Wow, I'm sorry. I can't remember who that was.
So that's how I saw the KFC sponsor. That was going to be my next question.
So I went to the big track because I'm a big shot. I'm already in the race. So I went to the big track and hung around in the Cup garage for a while. When I walked back in, they were putting KFC all over the car. I went, what are you doing? And they said that the other car didn't make it and that we had the sponsorship.
That's huge.
We did a short pit and basically running, it's still questionable whether it was first or second when the right front tire blew and junked the car. So it was going to go from a good night to a okay night. But, and that's back when, Randy LaJoy and, these guys.
Jason Keller.
Oh, yeah. All of them. I mean, they were all there. Doug had put together a pretty good deal. So it was fun.
That was just after, with a couple of years after the championship in the modifieds up here in '93. What was that year like for you and some of the challenges of winning that title and in that era, in an era where I believe far more races than what we have currently?
Right. Well, my brother Jeff had won it in '92.
Right.
and then he moved on. I was teamed up with. I went back with Kurt Chase.
77.
In the 77. I was driving for Mario Fiore in the 44. Mario actually helped me get the Polar sponsorship. It was his working with the proposal and everything that got me the sponsorship. But I was more guilt-ridden because I used to drive for Kurt prior to that. And, it was the expression wrecker or checker. It was usually wrecker. Very few checkers, if any, and it was always destroyed. So when I got money, I went back to him and put together, Mark and Eric, Kurt, Dave, all the guys. And just, it was pretty great. We got Hoosier, brought Hoosier on as a tire sponsor, which is nice because a tire sponsor back then meant that you didn't pay for your tires.
Yeah, and you got the good stuff.
And especially, you got the good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we, at the end of the night, we used to just give them all of our dirty, old, junky tires. And they'd come back the next week with all the wheels clean, all the tires mounted and balanced and ready to go. And that's how we raced. And that made a big difference, too. I brought them a sponsorship. I brought them a fuel deal. I brought them, a tire deal. And it made all the difference in the world. We won the championship. So
the whole tire discussion is interesting because in my knowledge of the sport, I've never known a division to have multiple tire brands allowed. At that time, you were allowed to run any brand.
You could actually do it in Cup too. People have to remember, the Jeff Bodine era.
Yeah.
Jeff Bodine, he goes out onto the racetrack and for 3 laps, he's a second and a half faster than you. So how do you qualify on a good year if you're going to get killed, all these people jumping on Hoosier? So NASCAR, competition, this is competition. Mm-hmm. You can't limit, the tire.
Yeah.
So they made a rule that said that if you time trialed on a particular brand, you had to race that brand.
Huh.
Well, that helped that problem a little bit because the Hoosiers would fall off so fast that the Goodyears would then catch up.
Okay.
We had the exact opposite thing working here. Jan Leedy was the Hoosier poster boy back in the 90s.
He drove
the 25.
The 25. And so we took him on. We took Hoosier on as our tire guy, our tire provider. And Irish from Hoosier and I joked a couple of times, and I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I think it's gonna go well. I'll sink or swim with you, but just remember, the first day I win time trials, you better run and hide, because that means you brought something way too soft to this racetrack, because I wasn't a good time trialer." And
so there's
yeah.
Rick Fuller's on the pole.
Yeah,
Something's up.
Yeah, if I'm on the pole, you
those
better
things are
run
going
and
to fall
hide.
off in 5 laps.
So we really worked together really hard on getting a good tire that would last. And we went to the Riverside Park race that year in '93, and it's a 150-lap race. And on lap 70 or so, the caution comes out. Every single car pits, and I didn't. Now, I was leading, so I'm following the pace car around, and
You're all by yourself.
I'm thinking to myself, you had to see the pits at Riverside Park.
Right.
All 24 cars are in there.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm thinking to myself, well, the car's getting better every lap. Why would I want to go in?
Yeah.
And the crew was not happy, but the outcome was good because we won the race, and that got Hoosier looking more at maybe we got something here.
So you actually had the same tire the whole race?
I stayed on the same 4 tires the whole race and won the race.
So was that just a superior tire at the time?
Just everyone always had the mentality, back to Mario, it's not handling, bring it in, I'll fix it. Put 4 tires on it. That's it. Just
the feel goods.
Just the feel goods, and away you go. And it did. It would feel good for a while, but these tires just got better and better and better. The quality and the durability of them, where they'd run the whole race. From a business standpoint, is that good for them?
Right.
Everyone's not
Obviously
running
not,
8
yeah.
tires now.
Yeah.
If they are, but that's what helps these weekly divisions is that kind of technology.
That really changed the game for
Yep.
the weekly divisions. The ability to only allow lower classes to buy a tire a week
right.
goes a long way.
Yep. It does, and you have to think. I mean, like pull your hair out type of thinking how you're going to do that.
It's planning.
What's the most critical tire? I hear Matt and Ben talk about it all the time with when the modifieds pit and you move the right front to the right rear or I don't know. That's beyond my. I used to just pit for 4.
Yep, give me 4.
That's it. Just give me 4.
And so I know I've heard a lot of stories about Mario kind of always having the inside track on tires, always having the best stuff. Is that true, or is it? It's always been like he always had the best tires. The 44 always had the best stuff.
Mario could, talk the skin off of anything, and Mario was he was very tight with Phil from Goodyear, and then moved over to Hoosier. And so Mario was always on a tire deal. So to throw tires at it wasn't a big deal to him. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, I don't know. He just he kind of had an edge. I don't know.
And so to stay on this topic but kind of go forward, what's your kind of take on going away from allowing all these types of tires and kind of having a spec tire? Do you think that's good for the sport? Bad for the sport, important? What's your opinion on that? I know you're not. You don't want to get into the politics, but I like to. You've been involved in before that and after that. So, what's your take?
Well, here's the politics of it. If there's not cars on the racetrack, there's not going to be fans in the stands.
Mm-hmm.
So, back when we built that race car, the street stock that I brought here and we won with. The engine in that car back in 1982 cost $10,000. In 1982.
That's a lot of money in 1982.
It was not my money, I promise you. But I got people for that. The way it works right now, the engine in my daughter's car is $4,600. And if we don't break it, I can get a brand new one for $2,600. How is that not good for the sport? So if I'm putting tires on and you don't allow me to put 4 on every week, then I can't. If you allow me to, I'm going to go for every advantage I have. Mm-hmm. So, to have a tire that is still safe after multiple weeks and limit the amount that you buy, you're just, you're ensuring that you're going to have a better car count on a weekly basis and more people in the stands.
You referenced your daughter, Meg, runs here in the street stock. We'll talk more about her and that part of your racing life here at Stafford in a little bit. But I want to go back to 93, that era. Who was your biggest rivals on the racetrack? A lot of, you mentioned Jan Leedy, Reggie was running full-time back then, Wayne Anderson. I think Steve Park was coming into it about the early to mid-90s.
Your brother?
Obviously your brother.
No, not in 93. We got rid of the little punk then. He left in 92.
He was a big shot then, right?
Yeah.
He won and took off.
He's same guy, actually. My cousin. My cousin got him together with Tad with the Sunoco the Sunoco deal. What a lot of people don't know, and then we'll go back to your question, is the person that Ryan Priest is driving for right now is the same guy that my brother went down to drive for.
And won,
awesome.
I believe, Tad's first NASCAR race at Thompson in a Busch North event.
In a Busch
North 300.
In a Busch North event. And then he was also driving for Tad when he won Bristol.
Yep.
Who did he beat? Not Jimmy Spencer.
Oh, boy, that's 95.
But anyway.
97, somewhere.
Yeah, but anyway. So in '93, you asked me, what?
Your rivals.
My rivals.
Who's kind of your, and not necessarily '93, but maybe in that era when you were contending for championships and wins.
Reggie was always tough. Everyone talks about Reggie because, he was always there. He was always someone you had to beat. But I was racing. I was racing against Richie Evans and Charlie Jazombek, and these guys that you think to yourself, how am I ever going to beat somebody like that? And and again, it comes right down to teamwork. But I didn't have any one particular rival. I never, everyone talks. I mentioned Jimmy Spencer, my brother, and him. They don't see eye to eye. But Jimmy was one of them guys. I promise you, you did it to him, and he was kind of like me. I'm going to do it back 10 times.
Yeah.
To get you to understand that, don't do that. But if you drove him with respect, then he drove you with respect. There was one race. I think it was one of the fall finals here. I don't think it was a Sizzler. He was coming up through, and my car had already gone away. We talked about the tires falling off of it, and I just put my hand up and pointed to the outside, gave him the lane. He went by, and with 20 to go, we had pitted real late, and I got to him, and he pulled down. He gave me the lane.
Jimmy Spencer?
And nobody else passed him in that race. I'm telling you, people remember. You treat them with respect, and he was somebody that you had to treat with respect because
absolutely,
man, oh man, he spun me out one night. There wasn't a bumper on the car. There was nothing up front but a wheel, and he still managed to spin me out. Yeah. He was good.
I just heard a great Spencer story. I guess he was in the Sizzler concierge, the non-qualifiers
race. Yeah.
Started dead last, and I guess he hit every single car out there, and he won the race, but hit every single car getting there.
Well, that'll happen. He had to win it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
He got it done.
What was the decision like to? I guess it was 2007, 2008 to throttle back as a full-time driver.
Well, you reach a point, most people do, where, you've done something long enough, and, at that point, I'm not, if I'm going south, it's only going to be on an airplane.
Right.
So, and not even my own anymore because that got wrecked. Not for me. Not for me.
Yeah, I didn't.
So, I had done all of these things, and my son at the time, Alex, 6 years old, sat down next to me on the couch and began a very interesting dialogue with me about wanting to do what I do because his cousin did it and he thought it was cool. Mm-hmm. Man, I told him absolutely no way. Not because I'm still racing. He's 6 years. I'm still racing.
Right.
And ended up, you kids always win. So I ended up. I started doing it, and I remember one night sitting here on the backstretch, talking on my phone to him because he was racing at Thompson, and Steve Lombardo, Bago, he's a NASCAR official now. He was there with his kids racing, and he was handling my son. He was taking care of my son. So I did it for a couple of years like that, trying to toss them both, and it just got to be where it, I was going to do that instead.
Right.
Is there ever a point where you're like, I wish I could get back behind the wheel?
For what?
There
to what?
is.
Hit the wall again? I mean, what, I
gotta ask.
You get to a point again, to not to cocky arrogance, but I won a lot of races. I won championships. I won. It's not like, I wanted to race full time, and my first race was Daytona, with the Channel Lock car in '98 with a full sponsor. Channel Lock was the sponsor, and it was cool. I got to do that. From there it went downhill because the team had different plans. But
so at the
it
start
isn't
of
like
that,
I didn't try, is my point.
So at the start, kind of just to jump on that car and the sponsorship and everything, was there a plan to have a full season that year?
Yeah, that was Doug Taylor. Interesting because, I get put together with him in '97. We go out, we race pretty well. We ran
Milwaukee,
IRP Milwaukee, and we went to Homestead.
I have a stat that there was was there a qualifying
LC
race?
Last chance race.
Yeah.
Oh, they used to do that back then.
Right.
That was a consi. Okay.
Right. So they used to race down there. That's back in the old Homestead days where the place was a death trap.
It was like square, right? Yeah, very flat.
It was a flat Indy, and the fiery crashes out of turn 4 were unbelievable. Anyway, I digress. So Doug pointed me in the direction of Channel Lock. Said, "Hey, and I went to Channel Lock. I approached him. I brought him everything I needed to. I had several meetings with him. I sat in their amazing place in Pennsylvania, and we worked a deal. And I brought the sponsorship to Doug instead of my own, which I'd never done before. I always took the sponsor and then
put your own stuff together.
Then would delegate, the finances. So I had no control over it. So that's how it ended up the way it did.
And so you went in, you competed at the opener,
Daytona. We went to Daytona.
What was that like? That was your only time there. It's the high bank, the super speedway.
Again, back in the day, we keep talking about back in the day, but I think there was 75 Busch cars there.
That's unbelievable.
And it would take 2 or 3 days to qualify them.
Qualified on day 1. And then sat on pins and needles because there was such a thing as getting knocked back out. My time was only as good as my time was. But a higher power than me decided to give the backstretch a really good headwind on the second day, and nobody went fast enough. So we made it. Had a really decent car. I think we probably had a top 15 car. But you can only run out of gas so many times in one race before it actually starts to come back and bite you.
So how many times did you run out of gas?
3 seems to be the number. So, the third time, I actually ran out exiting turn 4. And you can't go from 195 miles an hour down to pit road speed, which there really wasn't at the time.
No,
I
at
don't
the time,
even think there was. But
hand stop.
But still, you don't hang a left at that speed.
Right.
So I had to go 2.5 miles back around. Almost didn't even make it. So we ended up many laps down. And then went to, where was the second race?
I have you
West.
Vegas.
Yeah, we went to Vegas. Yep, we went to Vegas.
That was a new track, too. That was it was brand new.
Yep, it was a brand new racetrack, actually. Right in between all of that, my oldest brother had just passed away. So I met some family out there. And while we were there, the team announced to me that Kevin LePage would be driving the backup car. And I said, he's what? And so then one thing led to another. And he got all the good stuff.
Yep.
So anyway, didn't make the race.
And you ran a couple other, you ran at Nazareth for a show,
Yep.
And then also at Rockingham.
Yep, Nazareth and Rockingham with the same car, with the same people that I ran the Busch North race here with.
Okay.
And won. We had a different car when we ran Nazareth and
But the same team.
But the same team. It was actually Specialized Machinery Transport, and Butchie Shea was the crew chief on it.
Who is around still.
And then my brother Jimmy came over, and Jimmy was on the one that won here. So it was.
There's a picture of
yeah.
Jimmy in Victory Lane. He looks exactly the same as he does today.
Yeah, he does. He says he doesn't color his hair, but come on. He's over 50. Who doesn't? I'm sorry.
Let's talk about that win here. I guess probably the highlight of your stock car career, a win here at the Stafford Motor Speedway, and in what was the time, the Busch North Series, in a very deep field. Always fun to watch the modified guys come over and kind of invade the Busch North regulars, and there were a bunch of them back in the day.
Yeah, well, that particular race, that's back Mike Stefanik. I mean, he was I couldn't go anywhere without having to beat him, because he was running the modified and the Busch car, excuse me, at the same time. And
won both championships
and won
back-to-back years.
Both championships with conflicting schedules.
Mm-hmm.
There was events he wasn't even making, and he won both championships. But
wow.
Oh yeah,
Wait,
wow.
So he skipped events?
Oh, actually, he did end up skipping an event, and there was another time where one rained out, and then
helped.
Wow.
But that particular event, Teddy Christopher was leading, and there was 5 to go, and he had probably about 3 car lengths on me, and I only know this because I know some people that were up in the booth, and I think it was Bunky was the race director at that time, and I'm catching Teddy, and Bunky said to somebody, "Well, this ought to be good." I didn't touch him. He just actually he got into one really wide. He should have won the race. He got into one wide. I got by him, and we had a fast car, but I don't know that I would have beat him. So yeah, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Heck of a podium there too, with Jerry Marquis and Kelly Moore.
Yeah.
Yep. A podium. Then there was actually, I think the same year, I finished second to Mike Stefanik. I won one and finished second to Mike, which is a funny story because, Mike hated racing me in the Busch car. The modified was different. We both had the same goal. The same end game was the championship. The Busch car, I'm running a handful of races. I got a fast piece. And he says, "Man, I just hate seeing you in the mirror." He says, "Because I know you couldn't care less about anything."
Because he's running for the title.
That's right. And he wants the title. And I caught him. I passed him for the lead. And he wrecked me down in turn 2. And I'm thinking to myself, I wouldn't talk to him. I didn't talk to him all year.
Really?
I came back in that race. When I say he wrecked me, he spun me out. And the car was really good. Came back with no caution. And made the lap back up.
Wow.
And finished second. And I wouldn't talk to him. And I didn't talk to him all season until they had a governor's breakfast here the next year. And they invited me. I don't know why, because I was second. But they invited me, and I watched it on the monitor, and I thought to myself, well, that's not how I remember that happening. I remember him spinning me out. I don't remember running him into the turn 4 wall, 1,000 feet before that, which is what happened.
Payback.
Mike was famous for that.
Yeah.
You don't let it fester.
Yeah.
I ran him into the wall, never knew it. My spotter never said a word. And
so he sent you.
And he sent me. I earned it.
Yeah. Wow.
Want to jump to current day?
I think we do a little a quick fire first.
All right.
So we do a
fire
little.
Away.
Your first thought on the question. What's your favorite track? First thought. You got to spit it out.
But people ask you that all the time. I mean, unless of course you're going to go with memorable. I love this racetrack. I love Stafford. Stafford's one of those racetracks that you hear about all the time because it's a driver's racetrack. You can change the handling of your race car just by where you run this track and how you run this track because of all the different degrees, all the different angles.
The corners are different. The banking's different.
You know, back in the day when when they paved the inner berm there, and us crazy guys used to still come in and touch the grass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, the car is actually almost reverse cambered at that point. But, this racetrack is so cool because there's so many things you can do on it to fix an ill-handling race car.
And drivers like options.
And you got to love options.
Yep.
Least a favorite track?
The least favorite only because I've never seen such a small track wreck a car so bad would be Waterford. I just, it's like you wrecked at Daytona when you hit the wall there. I don't know why. It just eats them up.
Who is, in your opinion, the best modified driver of all time? You can't say yourself. So I know you will.
Damn. Well, it wouldn't be my short brother. You know what?
You can give me a couple if you have to.
No, I'm gonna go with Mike Stefanik. And again, had I never seen that video at the governor's breakfast, I would have never picked him. But when you're able to race two different, completely different cars, completely different divisions, and win the championship not once but twice in both, back to back. The difference of driving a Busch car and the difference of driving a modified. A modified feels like a slot car. You just turn the. This thing is
so much grip.
It's unreal. Yeah. And back then, a Busch car felt like you were flipping over every time you rolled into the corner. The car was just terrible. Stafford now. Oh, it was awful.
It's like this, right?
Oh no, my late model doesn't roll over. Anyway,
favorite Cup driver of all time, as a fan.
You know what? You had to like Tim Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
In his style and his everything.
Swagger.
But probably Earnhardt Sr. would have been the favorite.
And the last question, how long until we get a Megan modified?
Oh, boy.
Well.
Oh, boy.
On the way in,
Rick Fuller's daughter, so you got to ask.
On the way in, I was looking at the pictures. I didn't find the bag of money that I would need to put her in one. You know what? I'm old. I can't spend all my retirement money with Megan in a modified. I learned early on how much it costs to run one of those, and I think she's ready to run at least an SK Light, but without financing. I can't do it.
Fair enough.
I can't do it.
Great transition, though.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about Megan in a moment, but we can't jump over. Maybe you can make some extra money doing the broadcasting thing, but you had a short term in the broadcaster's booth years ago, doing some work at Waterford, the Funkmaster Flex event, and then some modified races up here for, I believe, Spike TV and the NASCAR New England show on Nesson.
Well, obviously you didn't watch any of them, or you wouldn't tell me I could make extra money doing it. Yeah.
Well,
it's really funny. You ask anyone that does the broadcasting and the production meetings and all of that. That Funkmaster Flex thing down at Waterford, that was a nightmare. I race you, and I know how you drive, and I got to know about 20 people. I had to know the background on so many things. I didn't study this hard in school.
Right.
And I was like, this is crazy. And you hear people like Matt Buckler sit up there and he regurgitates this stuff that, how does it stay in his brain? Because I've worked with him. Mm-hmm. He's not reading from notes.
He knows,
the guy is crazy. Him, Ben Dodge, all of them. It's amazing what they know. Yep. It's very hard to do that.
And for those that don't know, that event was an invitation event, late models, and it was guys from around the country. It just wasn't a local group of guys in that race. They invited drivers from all these different regions, and to your point, a lot of homework goes into that.
Like I said, it was crazy. And again, we go back to Teddy Christopher. He was in that.
He was.
And, what a surprise. He was fast at Waterford.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody built a car down south and brought it up here for him. And
Unbelievable.
oh yeah, and he was so fast they actually changed the rules right in the middle of the race. Flux could do that, I guess. I don't know. I mean, and they he was like he's going to start last. He's going to start first. I mean, it was funny, but there was a rain delay during that race, and I don't know Waterford didn't pay the electric bill or what, but we're up in the booth and we can't even see any of our notes. It was dark out. It was crazy.
Announcer.
Rick Fuller, the announcer. I love it. He'll have to do a cameo this summer in the booth.
In a street stock.
Street stock. Oh,
feature.
here we go. Wow.
So let's talk about Meg's career. Started here at Stafford 2 years ago now. Picked up her first win in the first Friday night of 2018. Ran a couple of events before that. Got to be proud of how she has progressed here these last couple seasons.
It's amazing to me how well she's taken to it. She did in the quarter midgets. Her and her brother ran quarter midgets, and it's funny because he was fast. Her brother was always really fast. Won a lot of races, and brought car home in a bucket more than once. And it's amazing her awareness around her and how she'd get through wrecks and how she, so I shouldn't be quite as surprised at how she does, how quick she picks up on it. But, winning opening night here last year was really cool, and it, not many people know it, but I listened to the race director, and he was having to give her directions to victory lane because she had no idea. She rolled off onto pit lane after she won, and he had to stop her and have her turn and come into victory lane backwards because she didn't even know where victory lane was because she never watched a street stock race here.
And her interviews,
Kyle interviewed her,
have come a long way since then. I mean, obviously that first win, still new to the place, still new to the people. She has gotten more comfortable here because you're beginning to see that fuller personality come out a little more. I mean, I remember the first time I interviewed her was that win, and I think I asked 3 questions, and I got 2 words out of her.
Well, in her defense, the Stafford personnel had failed her.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
They do an amazing job here making victory lane memorable.
Uh-huh.
But it was the first night, and they forgot the water.
Oh.
She couldn't even put a word together. She couldn't even talk. But back to victory lane here is so amazing. It is. I forget what it was like. I think it's actually better now than it ever was.
Right.
It's awesome.
You don't feel rushed. You don't feel. You want to get back there. I remember more times being rushed out of victory lane, and it just
it's an important place.
Cool.
It's
you work really hard to get there.
Exactly.
And you should be able to really enjoy it. And yes, she has gotten way better with her interviews.
She has.
I've seen a couple bottles dumped onto
her
father a couple times now. So there's definitely a water available now because I've seen it dumped on you a few times.
Yeah, and the car owner, Broadway Joe.
Yep.
Broadway Joe.
Yep.
But yeah. Appreciate you coming out. That was, and we really appreciate your time at Stafford. You're a legend in the ranks with a couple of Sizzler victories, and we're glad to have Meg and the at the track now, and we hope that the Pullers continue at Stafford for a long time. We appreciate it.
Well, with that being said, there's a possibility that Megan's brother might actually run here this year.
Wow! So we might get
news.
2.
Yeah.
2 Fullers back on track.
So we'll see.
Has he run here before?
He ran
one race.
He ran one race
2
last
years or so
year.
ago.
Last year, he got in one of the rental cars, and there was an issue with it toward the end of the race, so he didn't finish. But he was doing really well. He was holding his own. He was only about a straightaway behind, which wasn't that bad, and then things went south. So
that's exciting. So we get two Fullers again on track at the same time.
There's a possibility, yeah.
That's great.
Yep, I'm trying to get it all together right now. There's a lot of working parts to that one. 44 races. What am I thinking?
Right.
I mean, did I bang my head
just trying
again?
Just trying to get back to victory lane,
right?
Not sure the pit area can handle it.
And Jimmy doesn't work hard enough on Megan's car, so now we're going to make
him to work
twice as hard.
Should be fun.
Look forward to it. And we are less than 100 days away from the start of the season. Rick, thanks for taking the time to join us here on the Bottom Shop podcast, and look forward to seeing you here in a couple months' time.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
For sure.
Another great guest here on the Bottom Shop podcast, Rick Fuller, our third, and that's why we do this show. That's why you came up with the idea to do this show. A lot of great stories from the past, and in his case, the present.
Man, yeah, he's a mix of the past and the present. He's driven against guys like Richie Evans to Teddy to the modern day, and now he has his daughter and potentially his son in at Stafford every Friday night, and that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Good time. Something that we're going to do more of here on the Bottom Shop podcast. At the top of the show, a lot of news as far as what's been happening on the racetrack with some new sponsors coming on board and drivers moving around in different divisions, but a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes as well that we want to talk about as we wrap up episode number 3. First, let's talk about the website, StaffordSpeedway.com, because a lot of people go there this time of year to find out what's happening. I visited the website just yesterday, and it's a lot cleaner. It seems like it's a lot easier to navigate.
We've done a lot of updates. Scott and I have been kind of putting our axe to the grindstone, and we've kind of cleaned up the site so it's very mobile friendly now, and have also added statistics for pretty much every single driver going back at least 20 seasons or so. So if you go to the teams page, the rosters page, every driver has a profile. You can check out their crew, the hometown, their sponsors, and also all their past stats at Stafford.
And there's links to a lot of their social medias
as
well.
Links to Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. You're looking to find a new driver to cheer for. You can pop on the site and check it out.
StaffordSpeedway.com. Also on the Midway, there's a big banner off toward the turn 1 behind the grandstands.
End of the Midway.
50 greatest modified drivers ever. That was from what, 20?
It's from 98.
22 years ago in 1998 when NASCAR came out with that promotion. It was a big announcement at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and obviously Stafford had a lot to do with that. There are drivers, though, that we probably consider in this day as to be the greatest. Doug Coby, we hadn't heard of back then. He was still running late models, and Keith Rocco was just a little kid running around the Waterford Speed Bowl at the time. So a lot has changed in the last 22 years. So I guess we're going to have an update to the banner.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to add any drivers to it. That's still kind of in question. I don't know how to approach that yet, but we are definitely going to get a new banner.
Yep.
Going to also have a lot of interactive parts of the banner through codes on that you can scan on your phone, get some info on the drivers that are on that banner. It's going to be really cool. Kind of has that Indianapolis type feel of who the classics are, who are the drivers that came, back in the 70s, and it's going to be an interactive experience on the Midway that I hope all our fans enjoy.
And we see more and more of that at places like Indianapolis is a good example, but other museums where you take a tour and it's pretty much via your cell phone. You just get the scanner out, you scan the code, and all the information just pops up.
That's our goal here at Stafford, to be a very customer experience, kind of be very. If you're a fan, you come in, you can pop on the site, go on Twitter. That's the goal, is to be a totally interactive experience, and I think we have some great projects that are coming along.
Always something new here at the Stafford Motor Speedway. Episode number 3 wrapping up here on the Bottom Shot. Another great show. can't wait for the next one.
We have a great guest coming up.
Yes, we do.
Mike Christopher Sr. is our next guest. I imagine there'll be some great tales of back in the day between Ted and him. He was a 3-time champion at Stafford.
Yep.
It should be fun.
And obviously, his son races here every Friday night in the SK Modifieds as well. So that'll be our next episode. Mike Christopher Sr. will join us here on The Bottom Shot. Paul, always good working with you. We'll see you here next time.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap from The Bottom Shot, Episode 3 here at Stafford Motor Speedway.